Hello friends, how's it going? Today is the exact day of Pokemon's 20th anniversary. 20 years ago, on February 27th, 1996, Pokemon Red and Green were released onto the world, and I'm so grateful for that. Today, we're going for a walk, and on that walk, I hope to reflect on the happiness that Pokemon has given my life. My first exposure to Pokemon was through the TV series, which aired on September 8th, 1998 in the States. I vividly remember being glued to the television screen when I saw Gengar and Nidorino fighting in a massive stadium, even without knowing at the time that the scene was directly from the opening of the games. Ash's excitement at the battle made me feel pumped too, and if I'm being honest, I also kinda just wanted to live in his room, even though I didn't know all the names of the creatures that were represented with the memorabilia in there. It just looked so cool. When Pokemon Red and Blue came to the States on September 28th, 1998, something about that Charizard box art really seemed magical to me, but I wasn't able to get a Game Boy at the time. I did, however, borrow my friend's Game Boys and we played together. And that's what Pokemon started to mean to me: friendship. The creatures we battled in Kanto were our friends. We wondered how they were doing when we deposited them in the boxes. The battling part of the game was fun, but it was all just a way for us to get to know our friends better. At that point as well, Pokemon merchandise was in toy stores everywhere, and you can bet I wanted it all. Don't even get me started on the Pokemon food that came out a couple years later. That stuff was my lifeblood. Backing up a little, since a very young age, I loved dinosaurs. I spent my free time memorizing dinosaur names and facts and reading everything I could about them. I would draw them all the time, though they were mostly just circles with teeth because I was a truly excellent artist. I think that love of memorizing awesome creatures served as the perfect fit for Pokemon, since Pokemon are also super neat creatures. Seeing figures at Toys R Us in their signature red packaging made me feel really happy and excited, and I wanted to collect them all. I suppose that's evidence for good marketing, but I certainly didn't care. I continued to watch the anime every time a new episode aired, and it became one of my favorite things to do. Ash treated his Pokemon like friends, just like my friends and I did, and while he was learning about loyalty and friendship, so was I. Then we come to January 9th, 1999, for a release that rocked my world once again: the Pokemon trading card game. My desire to collect was never satiated, and then here goes Wizards of the Coast producing a whole game designed just to collect everything. It was a dream come true. I didn't buy as many packs of base set because I wanted to abuse my allowance on 3D things like figures for the most part, but flipping through my friends' binders on the playground at school was exhilarating. I had mostly just theme deck cards to play with because I loved theme decks. They came with a coin. How can you beat that? Is what I was thinking. Unfortunately though, that meant that it was very unlikely that I was going to get Charizard, unless I got the Lava Legendary Collection theme deck in 2002, which I could never find anyway. I continued to get packs sporadically through the release of Neo Destiny in February of 2002, at which point I put more emphasis on collecting the cards. I wanted to be able to trade more on the playground, and everybody I was playing with had some really impressive collections. I also remember very specifically that the guy with the biggest collection had a dad who worked for Nintendo. Yeah, sure. Changing topics a little bit to the release of Gold and Silver on the Game Boy Color on October 15th, 2000. I actually fell off of Pokemon for a while during the Gold and Silver era. I still watched the anime and the movies that came from it, while also collecting the cards, but I didn't play the game as much with my friends. The friends I had at the time were way more into the cards and memorabilia than the games, so it wasn't until Crystal came out on July 30th, 2001 that I felt like getting back into the games. I was in an airport when Crystal was still for sale, and I remember glancing in a store and seeing that awesome Suicune art, and suddenly feeling a need to have it. I asked my mom a bunch if I could, but it was to no avail. It wouldn't have made sense anyway, since I didn't have a Game Boy Color. Ah well. I made a new friend who had the game, and he would always show me cool stuff from it, but we never actually played Pokemon together. He usually just wanted to play games on Dreamcast, which I didn't complain about. The controllers had screens, and that was awesome. It wasn't until the Christmas of 2002 that I was able to get my first handheld game system, the Game Boy Advance. This glorious system was bestowed upon me with games such as Shrek Fairy Tale Freakdown, actually a Game Boy Color game, and Super Monkey Ball Jr., and that one was for the Game Boy Advance. Right before the release of Ruby and Sapphire, my friend and I would obsessively check Pokemon.com for any new Pokemon or gameplay pictures. I remember being at his house and just discussing how cool the box arts looked and trying to figure out which game would be better to buy. We both decided on Pokemon Ruby, and September after the game released on March 19th, 2003, I was able to start my own Hoenn Pokemon journey. After that point, I was fortunately able to get every system and every Pokemon game that released. Starting a new file in Pokemon games has always been, and always will be, extremely exciting for me. You can always count on that region's professor greeting you and telling you about the amazing world that you're about to enter. And these worlds really do feel amazing. Even though they're just pixels on a screen, your Pokemon feel real to you. They're your partners. They're your friends. They travel with you throughout every game and win and lose with you. You triumph over gym leaders, scale mountains, and face ultimate challenges. As silly as it sounds, these worlds became my home. Sometimes I would catch myself actually physically standing up and walking in the right direction when I thought, I should really get my Pokemon to the Pokemon Center, and then feeling really confused that the character on my screen wasn't moving. Returning to any Pokemon game fills me with the most pure joy, as I get to see my Pokemon just as I left them, looking ready to battle and travel as ever. Since Kanto was my first region, I devoted myself to memorizing it as if it were my neighborhood. Every little secret in the game felt like my special secret, even though you could probably hear the same secret on the playground. The Pokemon world is my home. Its significance ingrains itself further within me than simple nostalgia. Pokemon taught me the value of friendship and loyalty. Pokemon helped me connect with real people, and still does to this day. Pokemon always gives me a reason to look forward to tomorrow. Happy 20th anniversary, Pokemon. Thank you for everything you've given me throughout my life. Thank you for being there whenever I felt hopeless. Today, I will be able to download Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow onto my 3DS, and take myself back to the days of exploring Kanto in pure excitement and wonder. To me, Professor Oak will not be saying, "Welcome to the world of Pokemon," but instead he will be saying, "Welcome home." Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you all in Kanto.